used to sleepwalk when I was a child. We lived in a rough neighborhood, and I would wake up outside in the middle of the night, not knowing how I got there. I would have to then walk home and re-enter the darkened doorway I had left wide open for whoever might be lurking outside. However, the time that scared me the most was when I was about 9 years old. That night, I woke up and found myself standing in front of my bedroom window on the first floor. I had pushed the curtains back and I was staring out the window. But as I came awake, I noticed two big eyes staring right back at me. And when I zoomed out, I froze in place. It was a very large and completely hairless man staring at me. He had no hair, and his eyebrows were completely gone. He inched closer and closer to the window, his mouth wide open to let out his strained breaths with every step he took. He got closer to my face, to the point his breath made fog on the glass. He was looking straight at me, bewildered, like he wasn't sure what he was seeing. At that very moment, I realized what was going on, and I started screaming uncontrollably, still frozen in place but peeing down my leg. The man freaked out and screamed. He tumbled backwards and then ran off in a strange zigzag as if he was trying to dodge bullets. My mom soon woke up and came into my room. I don't think she believed me, thinking I probably had a nightmare. But she took that back the next morning when we found a screwdriver on the front porch and damage to the door jamb and handle. To this day, I still almost pee my pants when I tell that story, along with some laughter. But I will never forget the look on his pale face when I was frozen in complete fear, or his high-pitched scream before he ran away and vanished into the trees. I always parked in a certain spot at my last job for 12 years that I was there. It was accessible to the public as it wasn't company parking, but they wanted us to park in the back of the lot so the closer spots could be available for customers. One day my spot's taken by a dark tinted caddy, and I'm immediately pissed because everyone knows it's mine. It's morning shift at 4 a.m., so it can't be one of the others, because I know what they drive. Newbie? Maybe another employee from another shop in the plaza? By my lunch break, it's still there. It's still there after my shift's over. It's still there when I come back the next day. And it's still there when my shift ended at 9:30 p.m. Something about it really bothered me. It smelled wrong. It's the South and it's the heat of the summer, and who knows what's baking in there. My dad was a Marine turned police officer, and he always said, if you feel something is wrong, there probably is. So I dialed the non-emergency contact police number. I felt like an idiot, but every time I walked by, it bugged me. So I was stuck waiting for over an hour before the police showed up, and honestly, if I hadn't been off the next day, I would have not done it. The police showed up all annoyed because who knows how many they can't park here calls they get. The moment they run the license plate through, things go absolutely crazy. They want my info. They want to contact my manager. Does this place have cameras? Have I touched the car? Every question possible they asked me. Apparently, it turned out the car is on Amber Alert as the last sighting of a missing person who was a minor, a 15-year-old girl. When they pop the trunk, they find her dead, mutilated body under a blanket, and the source of the smell. She had gone out with her much older, controlling, and insecure boyfriend, but had decided to get out of the relationship. The only mistake she made was getting into the car with him. He drove 3 counties over after torturing her, stuffing her in there, and who knows what else. then parked and walked away, left her to die in that trunk. I never learned the time of her death, so it haunts me to this day, sometimes thinking she might have been saved if I'd made a fuss earlier. So yeah, listen to your gut, even if it seems petty. I was a kid around 7 or 8. This was the late 80s in Northern Ireland. My dad needed to return a library book in the Crumlin Road, a Protestant area in Belfast. We were Catholics, and the Crumlin Road was notoriously dangerous at that time. So I was already a little on edge, knowing the reputation of the place. My dad was cool though. It's not like we have Catholic printed on our foreheads. He did say, however, that I had to pretend to have a different name if anyone asked me. My name is one which marks you as a Catholic, so I adopted a Protestant name for the trip. We came to a road which led to an intersection, across which was a predominantly Catholic enclave called Ardwan Road. We were headed to the right, down a long, winding path, but further up the road ahead, towards the intersection, I see a group of men. One of them was running back and forth across the road, relaying information between two pockets of people. Some were staring across the road towards the Catholic area. One in particular stuck out. He had long hair, a leather jacket, and was really tall, at least compared to the other men. It all looked suspicious, even to me as a child, although I didn't know why, but my dad's demeanor changed to a more serious and quiet one. We crossed to the right and started walking away. We weren't walking towards the men. This is when a woman approached us. She was middle-aged with short red hair. She saw us coming and made a purposeful beeline towards us. She seemed preoccupied, nervous. She started grilling my dad immediately, asking who he was and where he was coming from. I could feel my entire body beginning to boil with fear, and I felt as though I was mere moments away from being, quote-unquote, discovered. It was like a horror movie where someone finds themselves in a small town where everyone is in a cult or something, and they're trying to blend in. I suddenly had visions of my dad getting shot and me screaming over his corpse. The longer my dad and the woman talked, the more I was starting to lose the ability to hear, as though my head was underwater. I was holding my dad's hand and struggling to keep a grip because of the sweat pumping out of my palm. It was clear that she was part of whatever was going on around the corner and was trying to manage and analyze the flow of foot traffic, especially that of strangers like us. She was fishing hard for information about us. My dad played it cool and responded to her questions without really revealing much. The area we were from, he explained, was mixed, and he feigned displeasure at that fact, trying to signal that he hated Catholics. He explained that he was just here to return a book, which he showed her as proof. She asked about me, my name, and I gave her the fake name. She surely read the terror in my face and could hear it in my voice. My dad decided that that was the time to break off and say, "Nice to meet you, all the best," and started walking away with me. I could sense that the woman didn't budge and just stood and stared at us as we walked away. I glanced over my shoulder and just caught a glimpse of her turning and walking towards the road where the men were gathered. About part way down the road, we realized we were being followed. We rounded a corner and it felt like we were walking deeper into danger and that we only had two routes of escape: keep going or turn back the way we came. My dad told me to run ahead and check that the library was open, and I hesitated. He said it was okay and to just go and check. I glanced over my shoulder. It was the man in the leather jacket with the long hair. I did what my dad wanted and ran ahead, heart pounding and ears pricked, awaiting the crack of gunfire. I checked the door and I ran back up to my dad. And as I was coming back, I saw the man in the leather jacket had turned and was making his way back up the road. My dad looked unfazed and he hadn't quite unclenched his fists yet. He said it was okay and we were safe. I asked about the man following us. He said he stopped and turned around to face him, ready for whatever happened. He said he was expecting violence, but the man in the leather jacket immediately put his head down, turned, and walked back the way he came. My dad watched him for a few seconds and then started making his way back towards me. That afternoon, within the hour we were there, a Catholic taxi driver was murdered on that very same street. The vibes that something terrible was going to happen were justified, and I never felt as terrified as I did that day. When the news about the taxi driver was on TV that night, I knew I had seen the planning of a murder, and I knew we had walked into the middle of it. There are some places you remember as a kid, places where you met a random friend, only to never see them again. For me, it was the old bus stop near my elementary school. That's where I met Danny. You see, Danny was small, maybe younger than me, always in the same red hoodie, no backpack, never went into any school, just there. We started talking after I offered him chips. He paused, then snatched them, devouring them like he hadn't eaten in days. "Thanks," he mumbled. After that, he was always around. When I asked him where he lived, he shrugged. When I asked him about school, he changed the subject. The only thing he seemed interested in was where I lived and whether my dad worked near the school. But then, we really talked. We both liked football. I told him I wanted to be a striker like Del Piero. He said goalkeepers were cooler, and we eventually promised to watch a local football match together. I assumed Danny was a stray kid, someone who needed a friend. But then I started noticing things. Danny flinched whenever a certain car stopped, a green sedan, and he would always then check the time. Sometimes I saw a woman inside. She had sharp cheekbones that could cut like a knife and always wore sunglasses. One day later, he showed up with a bruised lip. "What happened?" I asked. Danny shook his head. "It's fine." It wasn't fine. Maybe someone in that green car did it. As I packed my bag to go home, Danny grabbed my wrist. A bruise peeked out from his sleeve. "Can you stay a little longer, please?" He dug his fingers into my skin. I have to go," I stammered. He glanced at the car. The woman was approaching. Danny's grip tightened. "Please." My chest tightened. Was he too scared to go home? Was that woman his mother? Was she abusive towards him? Then, "Hey, kiddo." I turned. My dad was waving at me. Danny let my hand go. The woman stiffened. After a long moment, she dragged Danny into the car and drove off. I never saw him again. Not long after, my family moved. For years, I regretted not helping him. I could only hope that he was safe. Years later in college, I was digging through old police case bulletins for a research project. Scanning the yellow pages, my eyes stopped on a headline. It read, "Woman arrested for child abduction attempts." My stomach immediately dropped. A grainy photo accompanied the article. The woman from the green car. I kept reading. Authorities had uncovered a kidnapping operation that had been active for months. The woman would park near schools, waiting for her chance. But beneath the article was another image, a blurry face in a red hoodie. Danny. I knew something had happened to him. However, it was the caption that shocked me to the bone. Danny wasn't a victim. The bulletin described Danny as her accomplice, a man with dwarfism tasked with luring children in. For years, I thought I should have saved Danny, but in reality, I had saved myself. Let me preface this by saying I am one of the most skeptical people you'll ever meet. I'm not religious. I don't believe in ghosts or aliens or any of that. But this is the weirdest thing I've ever encountered, and I have no real logical explanation. My friends and I went camping up the White Mountains of New Hampshire most summers in middle school and high school. Now, being a bunch of unorganized teenage boys, we always took forever to get in gear and actually get going, usually not leaving southern Massachusetts where we lived until late afternoon. One year, we finally got up to the campsite at around 10 p.m. and decided, rather than hike into the woods, we'd just sort of camp out in the parking lot and then hike in the morning. After a bit of unwinding and some food, everyone went to bed, except for me and one other friend. We ended up wandering over to the small wooden footbridge over the river. It was perfectly clear that night, filled with stars and a fairly bright moon, and we were shooting the breeze for a good couple hours. It had to be well after midnight by this point. As we were chatting, we both got this creepy feeling of something being there, and it was sinister. Looking at the far end of the bridge was this massive dead tree. No leaves, just crawling branches silhouetted against the sky. We both were saying, "I swear that tree is creeping me out, but that's silly, right?" At first, we tried to dismiss it as silly, but both of us kept feeling more and more unnerved until I actually said, "Screw this. I'm a grown man. I'm not afraid of a damn tree. I'm gonna walk over there." I get about 2/3 across the bridge when it felt like something reached in and grabbed my pounding heart. Just went completely ice cold. I backed up and told myself, I am afraid of a tree. I seriously think I cannot come back over if I walk to the end. We retreated from the bridge and I decided we should go back to bed in the sleeping bags. The next morning after breakfast, we decided to hike into the trail by going across that same bridge. Halfway across, my friend freezes me. Dude, I look across the bridge. It's a clearing with absolutely not one tree in sight. Alex and his daughter have always had this weird connection where they can tell when each other are near. One day, Alex goes out shopping and leaves his daughter alone at the house. After a while, she hears the doorbell ring. She checks the peephole and sees her dad. However, she doesn't feel the connection. The doorbell just keeps ringing, and she asks why he isn't speaking. He continues ringing the doorbell over and over, and eventually it stops. She waits for a moment, then looks into the peephole again, and he's still there. She puts the slide lock on and then opens the door, and she finds her dad's severed head hanging in front of the peephole. Those are the 5 scary stories I have for you guys tonight. I hope that scared the shit out of you. I hope you were scared into not falling asleep. And if you like what you heard and want to see more, like and subscribe for more content just like this. It gives me the energy to make you more videos. I'll see you guys very soon for the next video. Sleep tight.